Let me just highlight some of the session topics that we'd like to cover today. Really what most of you have heard about cloud and your business model. You may have heard about it talking to colleagues or friends or other business folks in your industry. I want to establish a baseline definition so that at least when we're describing it in this context, that everybody has a sort of a similar understanding of what we're describing. I'd also like to talk about a little bit more about the cloud services that the resource group offers. And then we're going to take a look at some action items that you can work on with us together, either today or over the next couple of weeks. So as a starting point, what is the cloud and what does it mean for businesses today? Well, a good way or a simple way to look at it is it's just a service. And for a lot of folks in the audience, you might be mowing your own lawn or you might have a service that does your lawn for you. So a good example, this is quarter acre, may not be Bermuda grass here in the Seattle area, but some parts of the country, Bermuda grass on a quarter acre. And if you want to use a mowing service, typically $25 a week is not an out of the ordinary investment that you might make. And if you want to do some specific maintenance or lawn care, there may be a flat fee of $500 a year, or roughly $25 a week plus $500 a year would pretty much cover you. So when you look at services, you basically pay less depending on how you consider what you're getting. So if you had to buy a lawnmower and maintain it, if you had to take care of the fuel, had to take care of all the other elements and then supporting it, chances are you're going to spend a lot more time and money and frustration than $25 a week. So for a lot of folks, it just makes sense to outsource that. Well, when you're looking at cloud as a service, it's the same concept. We're providing a service and deploying it in a similar way to what you might do on your own. So on the paragraph or the graph on the left, if you were to self-host your own infrastructure with one or multiple support services, you're going to have a few remote users logging in to either an IIS server or some other remote server device, which ultimately will connect to your data. In GP, that's on a SQL Server database. If you have other programs, they may be running on a different type of database. So that's typical for a self-hosted environment. And then your on-premise users would log in through a desktop or laptop or some other mechanism inside the building and go direct to the SQL Server. So that's pretty typical of what a self-hosted environment looks like, and most of you could probably compare this diagram to something that you're using today. In a partner-hosted environment, whether you're remote or on-premise, every user is connecting remotely to our partner-hosted environment. So all the Dynamics data, all of the files that you're managing are all in the cloud in a secure data center that allows you to be able to access things 24/7. So really the difference is who's managing the environment for you. So to try to describe a little bit more about that, there's two different levels of infrastructure or software as a service options. So let me describe the first one to you. Infrastructure as a service, for the most part, is a hosted-only service. So what that means is your Dynamics GP system is the one that you already own or the one that you might be purchasing or adding to. And all you're doing is you're transferring those licenses over to the cloud environment. Traditionally, that would be anybody either currently owns Dynamics or has had it and is reactivating it to be able to put in the cloud environment. Software as a service includes the software for GP as well as all of the infrastructure. So I think for some of the projects that we're working on with the sales team, we've got, for the most part, software as a service situations where it just made business sense for those clients to not buy the software but to subscribe to it. And traditionally, it's a new customer. It doesn't have to be that way. If anybody on the call is in a situation where your software maintenance agreement is expired, and my understanding is that's very few in the portfolio of clients here, but if you do have that situation or you're comparing the cost of maintaining your GP license with your maintenance fees ongoing, there is an option for you to be able to subscribe to it. And we can talk about that offline on a case-by-case basis. The next topic that generally comes up is what's the difference between private cloud and public cloud? And there is a difference. Public cloud, if you were to compare it, is accessible by everyone from anywhere. So an example of that might be your banking relationship. So depending who you bank with, you might go on their website and you have the exact same features as every other banking user that uses that facility. It's comparable to, let's say, an electric utility or a gas utility. Basically, everybody is guaranteed a minimum level of service. If there's an outage, all the users are subject to the same outages as others, and because they're using the same service. So if the electricity goes down in your neighborhood, everybody in your neighborhood goes down. Cloud infrastructure is generally made available to the general public or a large industry. So you're going to run into situations where you're comparing options where you are one of thousands of users that are on the exact same version as everyone else. The difference between that and a private cloud is that the private cloud is deployed behind a firewall. It's not too different from what you might have today in your own server room, and it's managed by a service provider. So think about it as solar or wind power. So in solar or wind, you actually have all the power generation on your backyard or on your roof, and you have more control, more features and capabilities than somebody who down the street is subject to whatever the utility is going to offer them. Generally, you do pay a premium to have a private environment, but the cool thing is you have the additional security, manageability, and reliability that comes with that. And generally, the cloud infrastructure is operated specifically for your organization. So when we look at our offering, generally we find it's to the advantage of our clients to have a private cloud environment. That way you can be on the version of software that you want to be on that matches your needs at this particular time. And the cool thing is that can be managed by a third party or by yourself. So a private cloud environment allows you or your IT team to have administrative access to what needs to be installed, and also you have access to the database as an administrator. So that's the difference between private and public. There's a little chart here that hopefully is viewable from your viewpoint, and it sort of compares public versus private in the concept of enterprise. So you're looking on the left as public benefits, and often the only benefit that people tend to see is it tends to be cheaper. That's really the reason why a lot of people would go to a public option. Private cloud tends to have a lot more flexibility in each one of these categories: data security, protection, compliance, and some of you might be in a situation where you need to comply with HIPAA or with specific requirements that not every client needs to comply with. Maybe there's some differentiation that you do and that you want to make that available on your platform. You've got a whole bunch of competitive advantages that you can develop because you can configure your system the way you do. And in the case of the resource group deployments, each project is deployed in its own unique way, so you can still leverage all of those efforts that you've already invested in. With SLAs, we can establish different levels of access and different levels of reliability for disaster recovery. And we'll talk about a few of those in our conversations today. Operational security, audit options, so you can have the ability to audit your system by an independent third party. You can continue to use existing investments that you've already made in your platform. And the availability of support functions and skill is a lot higher in a private environment because you can actually collaborate and work with your infrastructure partner. A lot of the public options that are out there, notice this doesn't really have too many pluses. Part of the reason is it's an 800 number or a help desk that doesn't really know your business. So the idea of a private cloud is you develop expertise in the cloud environment that knows your business well. And then ensuring end-to-end availability, you can have your own custom way of dealing with that. So I think this chart is sort of helpful. Feel free to make a screenshot of this, and I think Brady and Kim will be making this slideshow available to anybody that's interested in sharing this with the rest of your organization. So we can put that as an action item at the end of the call. If there are any questions on this, feel free to shoot them over to Kim, and we'll start collecting those, and we can pause if necessary to address these. Kim says no questions yet, so feel free. I know somebody must have at least one question in the room, so feel free to share those with us. I'd like to go over some technology trends that we've been seeing over the last number of years. Customization of IT. What's interesting is smartphones and smart devices are really expected to make up the vast majority of business devices over the next couple of years. And I'm just browsing a couple of articles recently. Even Dell Computer, the powerhouse in the personal computer market, is struggling now because most people that are looking at a new device are looking at a handheld or an iPad, an iPhone, or your favorite device that you use and carry around with you to be able to use that as your device for accessing data. Also, the idea that distributed workforces are becoming more common. Used to be organizations had everybody working in the same building or at least within eyeshot of each other. Now, a lot of folks may need to work from home or on the road just because of flexibility and the need to get in front of your customers. And also the ability to utilize infrastructure. Interestingly, 85% of IT capacity is idle, or on average. So which means that they're not taking full advantage of maybe maximizing the time they have available because their focus is on managing infrastructure, not managing strategic parts of the business. And then complexity. It's not getting necessarily any easier. Software is becoming more user-friendly from an end-user perspective, but it requires a lot more work for the IT team to actually make it work that way. So if you're seeing something different, be happy to hear what those issues are. But these have been researched items and publicly shared information over the last number of years. And I think most of us are seeing this trend in our business experience. And then as far as IT budgets, the interesting part is IT budgets for the most part are maintaining operations, not necessarily strategic deployment of infrastructure. For those of you that are already putting things in the cloud, the apps you're using on your flexible devices, your portable devices, a lot of people are moving their data to a cloud environment, and it's expected to grow. Many of you probably already have some of your enterprises in the cloud. So what we're trying to talk about today is there a benefit of moving your GP infrastructure, maybe other parts of your infrastructure, to the cloud as well? So here are some possible reasons that you might be on the call today or thinking about this particular possibility. Some of it might have to do with technical skill set. You may have an IT staff in-house. You may have people that you call on an outsourced basis. However, technical skill set across the organization needs to be higher now to be able to manage a lot of the tools that are available. Scalability and agility, what does that mean? Well, if you're in a small size organization now that expects to grow quickly, or if you have a seasonal part of your business, you need to be able to scale up and down and be able to be flexible in the way that you deploy your resources. Performance and redundancy. For those of you that are working on older equipment, it may do the basics, but if you want to load the latest version of software on it, chances are it's not ready for it. So performance needs to be considered when you're looking at the cloud option. And also the ability to have redundancy. For those of you that have put a big investment in infrastructure, you may already have this set up. But for those of you that don't, it's an issue of how do I continue my business operations if the system goes down. And then access and security. Who has access, who should have access, and how can that be maintained in a flexible, productive manner. And overall total cost of ownership, we'll take a look at some components that make this up. For those of you that are maintaining everything on a current basis, if you're driving a 1967 Chevy that you've maintained regularly over the years, you probably spent more on that car in maintenance than you have in the actual cost of it. And total cost of ownership for IT is no different. That server that was purchased 5 or 7 years ago, chances are it's going to need something before you can continue using it, or it needs to be totally replaced. So let's talk about technical skill set for a moment. Really, for a lot of organizations, the focus of IT is not on the core business. So if you're in a distribution business or service business or a not-for-profit organization, IT is not necessarily a core part of your business strategy. It is something that supports your business. Being able to be proactive versus reactive. How many times does a help desk get called in a reactive mode? Not because they could be proactive, they just don't have the time, or maybe the tools to be able to be that way. Being able to have network support across the organization with monitoring tools, being able to tune your system. Those are all technical skills that today your organization may not have to the degree that you would like. And also the ability to have 24/7 user support. For a lot of organizations, that's not a reachable goal, to have that as an in-house technical skill, only because of the cost of that support requirement. And then trying to increase and improve the user experience often comes because of a high-level technical skill set that can manage the environment. Let's talk some more about scalability and agility, what you need when you need it. So the cloud environment generally gives you more flexibility. If you need to be with a capacity of 200 people in the organization, you need to scale to that with all the equipment you start with today, even if you started with 20 people. So if you're 20 today, you need to be at 200 in a couple of years. How do you get there without having to buy all of that equipment right off the bat? The ability to have dedicated environments that focus on your business requirements, where your administrator can control the servers and access. Also the ability to have productivity software investments all covered. So things like Office Pro, the latest version of all the server operating systems. Those are all questions that often drive clients to look at the cloud as an option. And in the case of our full service offerings, we include the server software, Office, Windows, terminal servers, SQL. And if you go to the subscription model with GP, you also have all the latest version of GP covered within server infrastructure or software as a service fee. And there is a lot of technology beyond Dynamics which many of you are not leveraging right now. Things like SQL reporting services, business portal. With Jan2013, there's a web client that requires a lot of technology to be able to manage. Those are all things that go beyond just the basic of accounting. So here's some examples: Microsoft Exchange, SharePoint, CRM, maybe tools that you've talked about internally, but either don't have fully deployed or would like to deploy at some other method. Many software as a service providers only offer one thing. They may only offer Exchange, or they may only offer SharePoint. What we're able to do is actually bundle all of those things on the same platform. So here's some examples of vendors that you might have heard about that only offer a single application. And we allow the replacement costs for all this outdated equipment. We build that into our cloud pricing, so you don't have to actually budget on a CapEx basis. Let's touch base on performance and redundancy. Optimizing resources, impacting business continuity and disaster recovery. I'm absolutely certain that everyone on the call has a backup strategy. But if your building was to burn down or be impacted or lack of access or equipment failed, what would you do with that backup? Where would you restore it? Could you restore it within a couple of hours, or are you looking at a week or so to be either down or limping along? Service level agreements are things that are part of your agreement with us, where we cover coverage for unplanned downtime. I'm having a hard time with that sentence today. Caused by network or data center equipment. We can provide an aggressive uptime program, anything from 15 minutes to an hour being the worst case scenario, or if the investment isn't necessary to be that redundant, 4 hours to 8 hours, or if it's less required, maybe a 24 to 48 hour uptime. So these are different things that we can talk through on a case-by-case basis with you. And as I shared earlier, most companies don't have a complex disaster recovery plan. They have a decent backup plan, but not necessarily a disaster recovery plan. And sometimes disaster recovery is as simple as a server hard drive fails or power outage goes out. The UPS, the uninterruptible power source, only has an hour and you need 3 hours, to keep your business running. We've made the kind of investments for disaster recovery that makes sense to be able to leverage, because you don't have to buy separate sets of servers, generators, bandwidth, all of those things. We have that all built into our process and into our strategy. We'll touch base briefly on disaster recovery. So we look at it as a catastrophic failure to the physical data center. That could be the building collapsing, but it could be as simple as equipment failing. So we have 4 different levels of disaster recovery. Our standard is a transfer of your environment within 48 hours, meaning if it went down now, within 48 hours you would be up again, guaranteed. We have another option we call hot-cold, where we update your data every 24 hours to an off-site facility. And hot-warm, we transfer data every 8 hours. And hot-hot, we transfer data every 4 hours. So the idea of that is when you go down at a live facility, the backup facility could be up as quickly as an hour or two, because we're synchronizing the data so regularly. And if you're synchronizing gigabytes of data, you need a lot of bandwidth to be able to do that, and we can provide that. So Kim, I'm hoping you're getting a few questions on this, or will at some point today. So feel free. Kim's available. She's sitting here with bated breath. We're ready to collect your questions or comments. If you have comments, if you think I'm off on any of this, let us know. The idea of failover time within a single data center. So we have the type of equipment that can move data from one server to a backup server within 150 milliseconds. So as a user, you would likely not even notice. So if there was a problem with a hard drive or a cable or power supply on a particular server, it would immediately, within 150 milliseconds that is, get transferred over to a backup server. So for a lot of you, you do not have this kind of infrastructure. Some of you may. but that infrastructure is relatively expensive. So to actually have it on your own would be a pretty significant investment. By us being able to provide it to you at no extra cost, you're able to leverage that technology very quickly and very affordably. Most of our failover time has been under 190 milliseconds. So really a user would not notice a blip on the screen this way. As far as the backups, they're retained nightly, weekly, and monthly. And there's a 30-day retention and archived for 7 years. We rotate our tapes and our data storage on a regular basis. And you can define what you want to back up within the profile. Generally, we're backing up user files, company files, email, and database information. And if you want to have an external drive sent to you every month or an archive of your data so you can have it in your possession, you're certainly welcome to do that. And you can also have other information backed up to a storage device at your facility. So a lot of different ways that we can back up data if that's important to you to have something other than our standard offering. We use a tool called Veeam Backup and Replication for those of you that might be familiar with that. Data security, for many of you, you are subject to a number of these requirements, so we can comply with all of those. And we can monitor your systems for compliance issues using threat management tools and log management. So if there are circumstances that fall outside of the parameters of your obligations, we can give you monitoring tools to be able to comply with that. Typical access to our system is through Citrix or remote desktop. Many of you may already use something like this in your own environments, but if you don't, this is it's basically a web-based access. We support all browsers, so if you have a Mac or a non-Windows device, we can support those. And we also support printing without having to do a lot of gymnastics to get that done. You have access to a full desktop, and it's secure and pretty decent for low bandwidth. So if you're sharing an environment with DSL, using Citrix does give you a lot of capacity for sharing that bandwidth amongst the team. We do have a baseline that we need to have to be able to share screenshots and mouse movements, but there's no real heavy data that's being transferred over your internet connection. And this would be an example of what a VPN access screen looks like. There's a special address that gets put in. That's the TSN dataresolution.net address right up here. And then everybody has a username and password that is used to authenticate your user on the network. So what this allows is the ability to connect to any location in the world through an unsecure environment. So if you're a coffee shop, a public environment, sharing a computer at a hotel, VPN allows you to secure that environment. And it's got the highest level of security, which is government approved. And we support the use of any device. One of the things that's important to some users is the ability to have an unmonitored printer or scanner or some device that's not connected to a workstation. Using VPN allows you to actually have that device be usable in the cloud. And so we can talk to that to anybody that has that requirement. Some of you may have heard of this term SSAE 16. What this is a standard for controls at service organizations, and it used to be called SAS 70. So for those of you that are subject to those requirements or need to be confident that the environment you're using is certified under these. And here's a quick definition. It's an organization providing services to user entities for which these services are likely to be relevant to those users. And it's an internal control for financial reporting. So SOX reporting and all of those organizations do expect this type of certification to be in place. And there are two different types of reports. There's a Type 1 report, which is a description of the service organization's system and the suitability of the design of our controls. And the Type 2 report is an organization's operating effectiveness of those controls. So one is the design and the second is the operations of those controls. And our data center provides you both levels. So currently the data center facilities that we have are Type 2 certified. We have redundant incoming lines with multiple power sources. 24/7 tech support in case there's any hardware issues that need to be addressed. We have video surveillance and high-level failover capabilities within each facility. The locations currently, just for your interest, are Los Angeles, Santa Ana, California, Las Vegas, Washington, D.C. near Virginia, and then London, England. And why are these important to know about? Well, on the West Coast, for many of you, distance from a data center is somewhat important, but the nice thing between the north-south routings between Washington and Southern California is the speed is very, very fast. And you may have heard the term latency. This is what we're trying to address by having data centers across North America as well as in Europe, is at some point the distance that the signal has to travel is important. So keeping the data center as close as possible to your organization is what we're trying to accomplish here. But we have clients from Australia, from Asia, connecting to our Los Angeles location, and they have an excellent experience. So the fact that you're only 1,000+ miles away is, in light years terms, or sorry, not light years, but light speed terms, not that significant. As far as our infrastructure, for those of you that are interested in this kind of detail, we use HP servers and 3PAR. And what's interesting about 3PAR, this was a company that was battled over between HP and Dell. There was a bidding war to try to purchase this company a couple of years ago because their technology is so successful to be able to have very fast hard drives and very fast failover. What we use this 3PAR system for is we share it with other customers, but each environment is secure based on all the software tools that are certified in our center as well as recognized in the industry. So the cool thing is you have a cost-effective service without compromising the benefits or security of that infrastructure. And it gives us the capacity to host 50,000 servers. And right now we're probably well under 10% of that capacity, which means that we've got lots of room for growth. So I don't envision anybody on the call today is going to push us over 50,000. But if there is, we'd love to talk to you, and I think Brady and I will meet with you in person to help you grow your business. The cool thing about this infrastructure is if one physical server fails, it moves your virtual server automatically to a new server seamlessly. So you don't even have to think about it. And if one server has too much of a workload, our systems move it automatically. We do use the Microsoft System Center to manage all of this infrastructure. So for those of you that are maybe using that today, you're familiar with those tools. The cool thing is you don't have to worry about all of this infrastructure in the back end. You just hopefully will have the confidence of knowing that it's there, that you can grow with this as you need to. So what are the components of a total cost of ownership? Well, there's the opportunity cost of not having the equipment either available or ready to be used. Obviously maximizing the investment in your resources. So as we saw earlier in an earlier slide, 70% of resources are either go under or unutilized. Hosting costs have come down dramatically over the years. When I first got into this part of the business 12 years ago, it was not uncommon to have a $2,000 or $3,000 per user per month fee to cover all the equipment that went into a small infrastructure because servers were expensive, the software was expensive, the bandwidth was expensive. The good news is those costs have come down. It provides you with a relatively low and predictable monthly cost, and you basically pay for what you use. So if you only need to use this infrastructure for 10 people, that's what you pay for. If you need to use it for 100 people, that's what you pay for. For those of you who are more accounting focused, it's the difference between capital expenditures versus operating expenses. And your balance sheet really doesn't need to have a lot of the gear on it if there's an alternative that can make it an expense side of the ledger versus a balance sheet side of the ledger. And the cool thing is it's accelerated speed to value. So what that means is if you called Brady tomorrow and said, hey, Brady, I need infrastructure for 5 users, you'd be up and running within days, not within weeks or months. If you had to go out and buy a lot of equipment, chances are by the time the turnaround time it comes in, gets configured by your IT team, gets validated, tested, and then installed, it could be weeks or months before you see your first return on investment. What I'd like to do is show you a couple of graphs here that I think are interesting. What we found is 70% of IT efforts is typically focused on low-value activities with minimal time on strategic improvements. And here's a chart that really identifies for a lot of organizations where they spend the bulk of their IT investment. It's really down here in the commodity value, down here at the bottom. It's application management, dealing with the database applications. It's in infrastructure provisioning, setting up your data centers, managing the hardware, operating systems, storage, and security. So I think if you were to talk to your IT folks or look at the investment you're making with external people, for the most part it's in commodity value. If you can eliminate part of that and move it up to the next level and start focusing more on user adoption and data management and applications sharing and providing data access, that's cool, but it's still not really what that IT investment ideally would be used for. For most organizations, if you had a preference, you'd probably be focusing your IT investment up here. Business intelligence and alerts, setting up dashboards, managing the data that's coming into the organization, as well as dealing with business process improvement. So looking at the workflows of the organization, process design. So what we're able to do for you is basically take all of this stuff at the bottom and allow you to take it off of your shoulders so that you can focus your IT energies really on this. So your internal IT staffs probably have some skills to be able to help you strategically, but they're so busy dealing with the things at the bottom of the pyramid that they don't have the time. So it's a way to reassess and reassign those dollars as well as those hours. Some of this might seem obvious, but I think if you take a look and just did an audit with your internal or outsourced IT team, you would find that with few exceptions, this pyramid is probably accurate. As far as total cost of ownership, what are the components? Generally what we found is with clients that are looking at a cloud option, if you look at it over a 5-year period, when you start looking at the replacement cost of hardware, software licensing, and support, generally a 5-year cycle is a pretty good cycle to look at because you're likely going to replace your servers at least once during that time. You're likely going to upgrade equipment during that time. You're likely going to change operating systems at least once during that time. And probably on your ERP system gone through 1 or 2 upgrades. When clients usually look at the cost of cloud versus on-premise, usually what they do unintentionally, but it generally happens, is they underestimate some of the additional on-premise costs that you have to deal with. Some of the IT expense, the HR time, any licensing issues that you need to manage, payroll, and all the other things that go on with managing an on-premise process. Often to get to a really good ROI, you're taking shortcuts. Either you don't replace the hardware regularly enough, you're using 3 or 4 version old operating systems, and the ability to actually move up to take advantage of newer features just doesn't happen when you run it on-premise, because to replace all that gear is pretty expensive. Often what will end up happening is you'll have unexpected system downtime, so either equipment failure or bandwidth failure. We already talked about this. And then users end up supporting all their own problems. So they don't necessarily have a 24/7 help desk to be able to connect from an off-site facility to in-house if it's on a weekend at 3 in the morning on a Sunday. And traditionally no off-hour support unless you've got that built in somehow with your outsourced vendors. For those of you that haven't tested a restoration of your backup, how often would you do that, in an ideal scenario with disaster recovery? And typically an on-premise system is not necessarily optimized for the user community that you have. It's whatever was purchased 3 to 5 years ago. So today, if your user community has changed or the software has changed, your on-premise infrastructure doesn't necessarily support that. So I wanted to just go over some of the cloud services that we provide as a team. We offer a safe and secure private cloud offering, so we talked about the difference between private and public. We really offer the same functionality as on-premise software, so if you've got some non-GP components that you feel would be important to have in the cloud, those are things that we can offer you as well. Predictable monthly payments. The good news is it's available anytime, anywhere. If for some reason your office was to go down, you could literally move to another facility, temporarily go to a coffee shop to work and get your work done if you had to. It's mobile friendly, which means it'll operate on all the different mobile devices. Oops. So those are really the general overviews of the services that we offer. And then here are some key reasons why you want to choose us as your cloud team member. We can offer GP in a private cloud environment, which gives you 24/7 connectivity support. There are no extra charges for business portal software. For those of you that have been trying to get to that tool, now you can start using it. SQL reporting services is automatically configured and ready to use. I think we find a lot of clients on premise don't have the desire to go through the effort it takes to get all this configured. So you end up spending extra time on consulting expertise to get it up and running. We tailor the solutions with the pre-built end-to-end function. So anything from the IIS servers and the web access all the way to printing your AP checks. And virtually all the modules are included. So for those of you that are looking at the module list that you currently have, and maybe there's some that you've explored purchasing, but maybe you couldn't justify the investment, it may be worth at least exploring the software as a service option to see if there's some additional functionality that you could get for a minimal extra cost. And then the cool thing is you get to increase your IT staff productivity. So what that means is getting them away from the plumbing of the IT department and focusing on more strategic efforts. So the sweet spot would be organizations that are looking for dedicated SQL servers or a CRM web server, somebody that wants to have the ability to do their own administration with SQL Server access, somebody who wants a tailored environment, doesn't want to just go with a cookie cutter situation. And a lot of our common customers have multi-location or multinational, so being able to leverage the data centers, the 24/7 support is a huge benefit. So I wanted to recap some things before we open it up to comments and questions. Really, my hope is in our conversation today that we've established a baseline definition for the cloud. If these are similar to what you already knew, that's great. If it's different, when you're talking to Brady and the sales team, at least, hopefully we're talking about the same general definition now. Our goal is to try to educate and inform you a little bit about what the cloud is in the context of a business system. What we hope to do is identify some factors to consider, whether it's infrastructure capabilities, whether it's skills, whether it's flexibility requirements or security. We've covered a lot of those, and you'll have these slides to browse back on that. And we did want to offer you a 30-day free trial to take a look at what the cloud environment might look like on the later versions of GP. If you're working on version 2010 or version 10 or something older, the ability to see what it looks like in a cloud environment on the latest versions, latest features. And obviously, getting in touch with us for a no obligation quote. So the idea is to take a look at your exact circumstance and try to give you some options as to what a cloud option might look like for you. So of course, Brady is the chief cook and bottle washer when it comes to this, and I think for those of you that might have another account manager, they would be working with Brady to fine-tune that. And if you didn't have Brady's direct line, here it is, and his email address.